Hey guys, I want to go over just a couple of things that I did to prepare for my first Precision Rifle Series match. I looked at all the various kinds of matches that were out there. I looked at distance to get there, travel time, who I might go with, and I pretty much picked the New Mexico Precision Rifle Series match because one, it was close, two, I had friends that were going to it, and three is Tate Moots, who I've known through Three Gun for a while. And the fourth reason was that a lot of people told me that it was one of the more difficult matches, and that it was a match that required a lot of varied skills. So I'm like, if I'm going to try this, I'm going to see if I can hit a home run. Go try the biggest one and see if I can actually make it through the match. So as a background, if you don't know me, I've shot Three Gun for the last 8 or 9 years. I had this kind of thought that if it's got a trigger and a target and a timer, it's awesome. So I enjoy shooting all kinds. I shoot USPSA pistol, I've shot IDPA, started a bunch of clubs, run a bunch of matches, hunted quite a bit as well. But when it came to precision rifle shooting, even though I shot high power out to 600 yards, I had never shot anything that I would consider to be a precision match. I didn't shoot any local matches, I have never shot any major matches, but I just knew that PRS, the type of matches that they were, was a draw to me, and I wanted to give it a try. So as I was going through the whole process, there were a couple things that stuck out. One is, in Colorado, we've got 3 or 4 pretty decent matches that you can go to that probably would have helped, that probably would have put those skills in place. But also I wanted to try to do this as pure as I could, to not have gone and practiced at a match, to not have gone and specifically figured out by watching people who knew what they did in person how it worked and getting that direct feedback. So everything I gathered either off the internet or from talking to various people, reading, just trying to find the information. So I don't care who you are, where you are in the country, the way I prepared for this match is something that anybody can do. And it may take you less time than me, it may take you more time than me, but anybody can do it. And that's the big thing that I wanted to be able to say after I shot my first PRS match, is that anybody can do this. So where did I start? First, I looked at ballistics. Ballistics obviously has something to do with it, and if you're shooting out far, it has a lot more to do with it. I guess I kind of looked at ballistics in an academic type of way, in that, okay, if I've got a certain number of drop, whether it's MOA or mil at 300 yards, it's got a number at 600 yards, got a number at 700 yards, got a number at 1,000 yards, it's all the same. I learned some, and I'll talk about that when we get there. So I did look at some ballistics, looked at different bullets, worked up my loads. I tried loading single stage. I tried a little bit of loading with dropping charges volumetrically, and then trickling charges, prepping cases, not prepping cases, turning necks. And really what I found is that once fired brass with a little bit of an inside neck ream and trickled to my weight was the most consistent as far as standard deviation. So I worked up, after I did a little bit of that research, I worked up a couple loads. I used 105 grain AMAX and 115 grain DTACs. Those are the 2 bullets for the 243 that seemed to stand out that people were using. I had other bullets, but I really only wanted to try a couple. I wanted to try to keep it inexpensive. So I bought a box of each. I loaded up 3 different loads. I loaded 42.8, 43, and 43.3 grains, both under the exact, those same charges, under both of the bullets. And I went out and shot a group, and the best group that I got at 300 yards is really the group that I picked. That's the bullet that I picked and I went with. It ended up being the 105 grain AMAX. I didn't try to chase nodes. I didn't try to chase anything else except for what was my best group at 300 yards. So that's the ballistics. The rifle I'm shooting is the Ruger Precision Rifle in 243. I wanted to try to stay under 3,000. I'm not there. I will work up a load and get there eventually. But anyway, I just kind of wanted to take that approach of buy 2 bullets, go out and find 1 load and see what works. Powder, I picked 4831 shortcut. I know there's a lot of other powders that were mentioned, but 4831, based on what I could tell, was consistent, cooler, and had longer barrel life as compared to some other powders. Is that true? People who know a lot more than I do about shooting long-range precision have said so. So I took them at their word. So a couple things that I did as far as working up loads. I use Shooter to do my data, but I also, on my phone, I'm using the Caldwell chronograph. And they've got an app, and you plug the chronograph into your phone, and it works pretty well. A couple of things that you can do with it is you can, and I've never done some of these things before, is that I can put in the distance of the chronograph, my ballistic coefficient, and all that information, and I can actually get what's called a true muzzle velocity. So I'm measuring the muzzle velocity. Well, for this one, I measure my distance to the chronograph at 15 feet. And so my average on this round was 29.77. That was the average velocity. Standard deviation of 5.15, spread of 13, and then because of that distance, muzzle velocity to the chronograph, and I put into the calculator with the BC, it tells me what my true muzzle velocity is, which was 29.86. So I went back to my ballistics program, which is Shooter, and I actually entered that data in more correctly. And when I did that, I found that the information that I was getting out of the program was closer to what I was seeing on the targets out at 500, 600, 700 yards. Was it trued out to 700 to 1,000? I don't know. I'll have to tell you next time after I go out the range and check some of the stuff, some of the things that I learned. I knew wind was going to be a factor, so I bought a book. Is it the best book? Don't know. It taught me some things that I didn't know. I learned some things about mirage and wind, and it definitely helped me in a couple of places in the match, remembering what was in the book and reading. There's also a U.S. Army marksmanship unit. There's a couple of videos on reading wind and mirage, and I watched those. So you can find those online as well. The next thing that I kind of learned from reading, and one of the interesting things about when I go shoot a 3-gun match or a USPSA match, I can almost always go find video of people shooting those kind of stages, that match. I found with PRS, nobody does video. None of these guys at least post videos of them shooting stages. So I searched and searched and searched, and I found a couple where it was like, okay, here's a guy laying on a belly shooting, and I couldn't really tell anything from it. I couldn't learn from it. So most of what I had to learn was from reading, direct reading. But one of the things I did find out about Tate's matches, there's a lot of positional shooting. So I did what I thought I was supposed to do as far as positional shooting. I got a bag, and I did different things. I would take my gun, and I would put the gun on the bag. I would use the bipod and use the rear bag. Doing different things like that. I even bought a cheap bag off of eBay. I got like 3 of these for like $6, and I would practice shooting with the bag sideways and like this, and I would take the bag and I would put it up underneath the rear, and I would practice shooting from a rear bag. The thing that I had never done in any manner was using a rear bag until maybe about a year ago. In the hunting, the things that I've done, I wasn't going to carry around a rear bag. I shot off a bipod just a little bit, but not very much either. So I had to play with bipods. Usually when I'm hunting, making even long shots, I'm shooting off of sticks. I'm shooting off of 2 fold-up sticks that I can put in my pack, and they're real easy and light. And it's just the Y sticks, so nothing crazy. So I had some other information looking at different places that positional shooting was going to be important, so I tried that. I set up some barricades. I set up some tables. I tried, shooting with my gun supported fully at the front and trying to get the right elevation with my body and flex and keeping it stable in the rear. I used this bag by tucking it underneath my right arm or my right thigh. And with a bipod on something stable in front, so I tried a lot of that kind of thing as well. The next thing I did was working with scope, adjusting parallax and then dialing on the clock. So I would give myself about 30 seconds or 60 seconds to fire 2 shots. I'd fire at a target at, say, 300 yards and a target at, say, 550 yards. And I would write down my dials. I would get the gun out, and I would dial and set parallax. So I would turn my scope to 0, turn the parallax to 100, turn my right left to also to 0. Then I would, on a piece of paper or whatever, I would write down my wind call, and I would write down my different dope for the 2 distance I was going to shoot. I would hit the timer, then I would dial in for the first shot, set my parallax, fire my shot, set my parallax, and dial for the second shot. So I'm actually, this is the 2 to 10 XTR2, I was actually setting parallax, dialing elevation, and dialing wind. And I got to where I could consistently shoot a 200-yard shot and then a 550, or a 300 and then a 450. But I could shoot those shots consistently, hitting my targets. 20 to 30 seconds was pretty consistent that I could do that. So that's how I practiced that from various positions, from the bench, from prone, off a pallet, a couple of different things. So some of this information that I got as to how to approach different things, how to load the bipod, is it necessary, is it needed, all those kind of things. A lot of that stuff I got from basically 3 different sources, and one's really probably the same source. But when the Sniper's Hide, I actually got on Sniper's Hide and I would read some of the lists, and it was actually pretty easy to find out who were the people who were actually doing the shooting and shooting matches, and who were people who were kind of not. So anyway, once I got kind of identified some of the people and who to listen to and who to ignore, that really helped. Frank Galley is here local to me in Colorado. I contemplated taking a class from him. I even contemplated taking a class from Kate, but I really wanted to still try to take and shoot a match without having taken a class and without having done anything related to actually shooting any kind of even a local match. So I also got information from Tom Freeman. People know him as Hoser. He posts on the local Colorado forum. So when he was posting about things related to 243 and positional shooting and kind of the let's cut through the BS and here's what really works, I read those posts and listened to them and paid attention to them. So one of the things that I did for practice is I actually shot this gun a little bit more than the gun that I shot in the match. I put about 500 rounds through this gun. This is a 6.5 PCC. And the reason I shot this gun as opposed to another gun, it's a little bit more recoil. It's also the only gun that I had that had the ability to dial windage, parallax, and elevation all in the same scope. So this is a little brother. This is the 2 to 10 little brother to the scope that is actually on the gun I shot in the match, which is the 4 to 20 XTR2. So this gun setup, I guess you call it my trainer. It's a 6.5 PCC, which shoots a 6.5 millimeter bullet out of a .223 case. So it was easy to prep, easy to prepare, I found that it really didn't matter a whole lot what the ballistics were as long as you had proper data to dial into your scope. Meaning that if I was shooting at 440 yards, if my data at 440 yards matches, it doesn't make any difference what caliber I'm shooting, I'm dialing that same information, at least out to maybe 700 yards. The gun that I shot actually in the match, the Ruger Precision Rifle, this is bone stock. I bought it, put a scope on it, put a bipod on it. I didn't adjust the trigger. I set the stock up for myself. So bone stock is what I shot in the match. Again with the 4-20 XTR2. I had about 225 rounds on the Ruger Precision before I shot the match. And I shot about 125 in the match. So it's still fairly young. Still doing well. I'm happy with it. So mistakes. Mistakes that I think I made going back and looking at the match afterwards were that I did not practice doing no dial shooting. Meaning shooting at 300 and 550 or 400 and 800. I didn't practice doing that using the mil dots in my optic to get my hold over, hold under, and wind. I dialed every single shot that I fired out of the Ruger Precision up until the match had been a dialed shot. Every shot that I fired out of this 6.5 PCC past 300 yards was a dialed shot. That was a mistake. I became too dependent on crosshair on the target and shoot. And there were some stages where just dialing on the clock just didn't make sense. So there was a stage that required us to do hold under, hold over. And so I'm like, oh, crap, what do I do? And it was the second day, so I'd already shot a bunch of stages. And I shot that stage and ran it really well. I don't think I even had a miss. I ran out of time before I shot the maximum number of points. But by that time I had calmed down and was more patient, and I knew where to hold, so I was shooting my gun, shooting my shots, getting my hits, and only moving on after I had verified impact. So for the rest of the match, I really didn't dial as much. So that was a huge mistake. I think I could have picked up several points if I had practiced shooting at 600, 700, 800 yards, not dialing, just doing holds. Another mistake, rear support other than a bag. I think everybody on my squad at one point or another used a rear support of some kind. So maybe their bipod was on tires, but they were putting a tripod and then using their support hand to lock into a post or a pod or something and using that as stability. I was using a bag sometimes, and other times just trying to actually muscle myself to stability. It didn't work. So that was a big mistake that I made in preparation, is not using any kind of mechanical support that's on the ground for the rear on a couple of those stages. So that was a big mistake. Mental. I had some mental. It was mentally challenging. A mentally challenging match. The first thing that I really had to learn, it was about probably 2/3 to 3/4 of the way through the first day, and then talking to my roommate that I traveled down with, Andy Reinhardt, who ended up finishing 8th in the match. I didn't get to shoot with him. I ended up shooting on a different squad, which was actually probably pretty good for me. But that whole concept that I don't have to shoot all the shots, and I don't have to shoot all the targets. You know, in 3-gun, I haven't timed out on the stage, and I haven't left a single target in 4 or 5 years. And the thought in my mind that Tate put 198 targets out there and I only shot 125 was almost embarrassing when I first thought about it. And then I realized it's points. It's getting those points. And so I was rushing. When I thought, okay, I've got 60 seconds or 90 seconds or 120 seconds to shoot these 12 targets, and I see in my math head, I'm going, oh man, I need to shoot every one of those targets I've got 8 seconds from position to position, and I've got 4 seconds to set up and shoot that target. That's what I was thinking. So I started rushing shots. And when I did that, I was missing. So again, a huge mental mistake. I corrected that towards the end of the day on A stage, and I corrected it the second day shooting. So it's a huge thing that for me was not rushing those shots, making sure that every shot is as precise as can be. A couple of my squad mates started telling me that too. They said, look, you're going too fast, you're jerking the trigger, you're not following through. And so that direct feedback from squad mates after I shot a stage helped me mentally prepare for the following stages. 2 or 3 stages, I made a big mistake also in locking in. And what I mean by that is I thought I had my wind call, I thought I had my elevation, and regardless of which one was off, not adapting on the clock, not taking the bullet splash and what I feel on my cheek and the motion of the dust out at range and correcting that. I've got 3 good data points. I've got wind on my face, dust at distance, and a bullet splash that I ignored. I ignored them on the clock several times. And I think if I had figured out before the end of the match, because I didn't figure that out to the end, before the end of the match, to not lock in, that everything's fluid, that would have helped. So kind of a failure to adapt more than anything else. So the New Mexico PRS match, again, some guys told me it was one of the hardest. The reason I picked it is I thought that the pistol points, reverse kneeling, and my offhand shooting was pretty good, and that maybe that would give me some benefit. In one of the stages, they actually had us shoot a IPSC gong at, I think it was 375 yards with just a sling, and my offhand skills from shooting 3-gun really helped there. I got both hits. I heard some giggles behind me, like, which was good. It was encouraging to get those hits and move on. So another couple mistakes that I made was weak shoulder. I had never tried weak shoulder with a precision gun. And when I got down behind the gun, on the stage, precision, on the timer, and squinted my right eye and tried to see through the scope, it was blacked out. I couldn't see where I was. I had the wrong position. I wasn't sure if I should shoot with my weak hand or my strong hand. I really had no clue what to do, which was a little bit disheartening because I've shot a lot of weak hand, weak shoulder. I've got a little bit of ambidextrous skills, so not having done it, you don't know. I mean, even if you've got some good skills. So that was one of the things that next time I go to the range, I'm going to be shooting 20 or 30 rounds, weak shoulder, out at 600, 700, 800 yards, and Tate won't bite me with that one again. One of the things that I really learned about this match is that 700 yards and in is kind of like 3-gun. 700 yards and in wasn't that difficult for me. It was the 700 yards and out. And I said that a couple times to a couple of my squad mates, and they're like, yeah, that's when stuff gets squirrely. Your factors of error, your margin of error goes away when you get out 700 yards. Everything has to be precise, or you're not going to hit those small targets out at distance. So I think shooting smaller targets, 1 MOA, 1.5 MOA targets at 800, 900, 1,000 yards, 1,100 yards is definitely going to be in my plan for preparation before I shoot my next match. Another reason that I kind of picked the New Mexico PRS match as opposed to some of the others is people had told me that 85% of the shots at this match or that match or whatever were belly shots, or belly match. I can shoot prone fine. Hunting, I'll shoot prone. I've shot prone, and to me it was just one task. And if the target was past 700 yards, it's being perfect on your wind calls, and the elevation wasn't that difficult, but it's the wind calls. So I'll probably go and shoot a couple matches that are primarily belly matches and see how I do. But I wanted to see how Tate challenge people. So before I went, I talked about 700 yards. Before I had gone, I really had only shot like 10 rounds at 1,045, 845. Most of my practice was 700 yards and in. And like I said before, the 700 yards and in was really not that challenging. I mean, I'm not going to say it was easy. It was hard. But I knew what I was doing. I knew what I needed to get and what I needed to see in the reticle in order to make the hit. When you got to 700 yards and out, I lost because I hadn't practiced it. So that was probably the biggest thing, was the 700 yards and out and not having practiced and not having done that kind of work. So anyway, I hope that that helps you kind of see how I prepared. It was humbling, but it was really cool too. I mean, there was a lot of things that, there were some situations where like, I don't know if I'm going to get a single point, and I ended up doing well on the stage. So some kind of trainer, you know, yeah, I had the 6.5 and it worked, but I think even shooting a 223 bolt gun or a 223 gas gun, at least from the positional stuff, more challenging positional stuff than we even see in 3-gun, was definitely a benefit. And then shooting off the bipod and the rear bags, you got to do it. And getting that rear support solid is definitely a big thing. So I hope that helps. I hope this video helps you. If you want to go shoot PRS, remember what I said at the beginning, anybody can do it. There's a lot of information out there. It's just scattered all over the place. So I hope that I've been able to pull a little bit of it together for you to at least kind of give you an idea of what you might be up against if you go shoot your very first PRS match.